Hello, Moda. What's going on here? Kaido raised his eyes and looked around, asking questions when he was puzzled. Extract Charlotte Linlin's powerful talent to create a war weapon with Charlotte Linlin's terrifying physique. Hearing this simple and easy to understand answer, Kaido's eyes burned suddenly, and he could already foresee the lethality that horrible thing would play in the war. So asking Laozi to come here also needs to extract Laozi's talent? Kaido asked. The more the better. Moda nodded, reaching out to hold the most common alloy in the base, but the rarest alloy outside. This is the latest product that can be popular in the future era. It is even more powerful than Smile. It can create mechanical weapons with biological characteristics, and has strong self-recovery and bonding power. As he said, Moda looked at Kaido. As a symbol of your strong recovery power, I really want to see it. After you have been blessed with your talent, can this alloy, a product of new technology, usher in a new level of change? The rest of the scientists present couldn't help but look at Kaido when they heard the words, thinking about its powerful immortality attribute. A lot of fiery thoughts arose in their hearts. As for Kaido, since he was released from prison by General Moda and brought to the deepest part of the research base, there shouldn't be any other problems. This time, Kaido didn't hesitate. He just cast a glance at Charlotte Linlin, and then he let go and said, since this is the case, it's just for me to see what kind of so-called weapons of war with my talent will be. However, I don't have the time and mood to stay in this bird place for your scientific research. It was also studied by Vegapunk, and its own physical talent was also studied by the other party, but it was not a one-time job, but a long-term supply, which needed to be taken once in a while. A large amount of factors is extracted once a year, and I will not restrict you in any way during the rest of the time. Moda raised his index finger and continued. You can also regard this as a business, although it is a bit troublesome, but compared with life, everything is worthwhile, not to mention that I can give you the opportunity to participate in a grand battle that can be engraved in the long river of history. Kaido snorted coldly, but didn't say much, apparently acquiescing to Moda's words. Compass, guy. Moda looked at the two main scientists and ordered, extract and record his life factor, and then use the book ability to try to create a higher-level morphological memory combination. The two of them heard that, compared to Guy, they were a little shy in the face of the four emperors, but the native-born comps led them like ordinary people. There is no anger or fear. Since he stepped into the field of science, this kind of emotionality that may affect his mood has already been swallowed by him. Now looking at Kaido, who once brought the dark corner to Wano Kuni, there is only the excitement and enthusiasm of being able to create new products for him. Kaido naturally noticed something, and couldn't help but compare in his heart. Maybe he is a lunatic like Vegapunk again. No, it should be said that people engaged in the field of science are generally lunatics. Moda, how is Laozi's army arranged? On the way to the equipment led by Compass, Kaido suddenly looked back. The 100 Beasts group has already been defeated, and they will of course become Wanakuna's nourishment after being reduced to prison. After Moda made it clear, the conversation changed again. You only have 2 big billboards left, but they can be returned to you. And that guy Runty. Kaido added. Now it's not about your choice, but about what I give. Regarding what Moda said, as the defeated party, Kaido naturally knew the result, so he didn't say much, and he didn't have any emotions such as dissatisfaction and anger. Anyway, it's just asking more with a cheeky face. Of course it's best if it can be done, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't. Even if he still retains the arrogance that a king should have, but in this regard, Kaido will still break through the lower limit by accepting Moda's alternative sense of conscription and bribery. Surrounded by the 2 and other scientists, Yamato watched Kaido like an eye. In fact, these defenses can be reduced to a certain extent after listening to Kaido's thoughts from the perspective of knowledge, but the attitude shown to Kaido should still be there, not to mention that this is Yamato's own idea, and Moda will let it go. Now, rather than solving the problem of Kaido, the direction of vision should also be placed on the tide of the sea after this summit battle. After directly solving the 2 sea emperors, only Whitebeard and the world government dare to make plans for Wano Kuni now, and most of the rest will focus more on the legacy of Kaido's defeat. This is not what he needs to pay attention to. From the beginning to the end, the 10,000 Kingdoms Islands are Moda's target. But this time, because of the short-handedness of the government and the current scale of Wano Kuni, the world government chose to recruit troops and expand marine strength to deal with it. Just don't know what to expect from Whitebeard's side. However, with Whitebeard's personality, even if the Shadow Guard's information has not been reported, at least the other party will still come to argue with him, and have a collision with Whitebeard. It is also inevitable. This is the final ending. Moda should not let it develop into Big Mom pirates and Beasts pirates. It's okay to talk about the ending, but now there are still 11 years before the end of the prophesied ending. Compared with the only force in the new world, there is Whitebeard, a force that can destroy the world, and many things are more convenient. Speaking of which, shortly after the end of the war, Moda received a report from the Grand Line and New World frontline shadow guards. The red-haired Shanks, who was also a mystery in the original book, marched towards the New World with the red hair pirates he had gathered for thousands of years. This is a genius who is highly accomplished in conqueror's hockey and swordsmanship, and to some extent is very similar to himself. Even the method of deduction to the point where conquerors can be used to block out knowledge, and knowledge is also used in the other party's original work, and today's Moda is also developed. But for Shanks, knowing this guy's character, Moda doesn't have any ideas or interests in his bag. And maybe, after knowing that Moda has taken away the ability of Gurgur fruit, maybe there will be a big war. New World, a winter island. Hoo-hoo. The wind was cold and the snow was scattered. It is difficult to adapt to the extremely cold weather, and the temperature is so low that people can't help shivering even if they put on a cotton jacket. And in such a cave on the island, under the flickering fire, the sound of laughter and conversation continued to come. Even the cold outside could not affect the lively and high-spirited banquet atmosphere at this time. It's just that under the cheerful banquet atmosphere, the red-haired Shanks, who is both the captain and the leader of the banquet atmosphere, completely focused on the recent newspapers, with a thoughtful and silent expression. Shanks, I just received the information from Sister Shaki. Soon, Bendik Snake, the navigator on the ship, a blue-gray man with sunglasses, ran in from the cave with a newspaper in his hand. What's the situation? Is it because the captain asked Mrs. Shaki again? Ha ha ha. Really, like a child who didn't go to sea. Under the cheerful reception at the banquet, everyone in the cave began to joke that although they are captains, their relationship is more like red hair pirates of partners. This kind of thing is commonplace. It's just that at this moment, Shanks didn't follow the words of his partners to be happy. Instead, he put down the newspaper and took the letter paper handed over by the other party. As the gaze browsed over and over again, until the letter paper was completely read, his face became dignified, and there was still some surprise in his eyes. Standing by the side of the red hair, who also roughly read the information on the letter paper, the second person in the red hair pirates in the think tank, Ben Beckman, frowned and said, "This is really a series of turbulent events, and now even Whitebeard is going to fight with him. Is the air general going to war? Anyway, it has nothing to do with us, as long as it doesn't affect us." A big fat man sitting by the fire, holding a piece of roasted leg meat and munching with great mouthfuls, said it had nothing to do with himself. Sniper Usopp wiped his favorite gun and said, "That's right, and don't we also have a goal? It just so happens that the structure of 4 emperors has collapsed. We have accumulated so many years in the Grand Line, but we just took this opportunity to make a big splash, hands and feet." Because of the red-haired Shanks, it is not the usual second-rate and third-rate paradise team of the Grand Line. While traveling around the world in the first half of the Grand Line, this group of crew also absorbed the knowledge of Shanks on the Roger ship. At least everyone on this ship, Haki's level of mastery is not weak, and there are even quite a few who have already mastered a further advanced level of armed color. Whitebeard and the air generals are at war. The red-haired frowned and asked Zhang's confidant, "Is there a way to stop them?" As soon as this remark came out, the pleasant atmosphere of the banquet immediately died down. Many companions hurriedly turned their heads in astonishment, and looked at the redhead with a somewhat dumbfounded expression, which seemed to indicate that you knew what you were talking about. "No, boss, you want to touch this muddy water? This is not something our current team can participate in." Usopp cried out in shock, and couldn't help but stop wiping his guns. Wano-kuni, who defeated Big Mom and 100 Beasts, and the Whitebeard faction, which owns the world's #1 pirate group, are beyond the reach of a small shrimp-like pirate group like them. They have only set off from New World for a while, but they have set a goal, that is, in this chaotic situation, to fight for part of Kaido's legacy, not only to achieve the reputation of red hair pirates, but also to be able to win in New World. There is a place to stay. It's too simple for you to see. New World is the sea area where we, as pirates, will stay in the future. The situation here is already chaotic enough. If Wano-kuni and the Whitebeard pirates come to a shocking event, then New World, the world will completely change. Beckman took a breath and said, "Are you worried about the intensified turmoil in the New World situation, and the impact it will have on the pirate forces?" "You still know me best." Shanks smiled, and couldn't help but look at his convinced deputy. If New World is seriously damaged, then it is very likely that the pirate age will also be affected and exacerbate its decline. I don't really want to see this kind of situation, and it may not be able to fulfill certain agreements. As Shanks said, he couldn't help touching the top of his head, as if recalling a straw hat that was once hanging on the top. Perhaps it was because he entrusted the new era to the identified Luffy, or the entrustment and straw hat that Roger gave before his death. The red hair pirates looked at each other in blank dismay, but after experiencing so many adventures, the main reason for boarding the ship was the charisma of Shanks rather than strength and treatment. Naturally, he said he was reluctant, but when it came to the key to the other party's thinking, he would naturally stand up as a trusted partner. Well, this sentence is correct, and it is not certain. My son may also go to sea with Luffy. Usopp smiled. Before then, we really have to do something for their adventure to the new world. Get ready. Usopp was like this, and the others were more direct, all smiling, raising wine glasses or leg mead, and echoing. What a bunch of idiots. Beckman smiled and looked at Shanks. What are you going to do? Do you already have an idea to stop them? I don't have a better idea yet, but I plan to meet with Whitebeard before he acts. Shanks scratched his head and smiled. Anyway, the boat will go straight to Guy when it reaches the bridge. And Shanks still thinks Whitebeard is a better choice than Moda, which took away Mr. Odin. Whether it is the degree of familiarity or the degree of diaphragm response. You really? Beckman couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat, but like the other crew members, he didn't say much. Putting his hand on his left arm that could no longer touch the entity, Shanks flashed a reminiscing smile, and then said seriously, this battle for the apex is already a last resort, but before the arrival of the new era, I only want this: the chaos will end soon. Therefore, the red hair pirates, who obviously just entered the new world not long ago, miraculously planned to intervene in the forces of Moda and Whitebeard under the statement of Shanks, to prevent a disruptive situation. See Circle Calendar early 1511. A week later, under the apex event of the Wano Kuni forces in the Double Emperor Alliance, the aftermath of the tremors drove the sea to frenzy, causing many opportunistic actors under the sea to surge undercurrents. In the new world where the structure of the four emperors has been broken, heroes from all walks of life who have been suppressed and hidden for a long time, under the vacant throne position and huge wealth, are all envious of it. Especially in the case of committing crimes within a week, the Air General, the absolute winner of the war, just took the 10,000 Kingdoms Islands away, and did not put his mind on Kaido's legacy, and many people's minds gradually became bolder. Grand Line, a remote sea area filled with mist in the sun. At the port in the sea area, it can be clearly seen that there are more than a dozen huge pirate ships, showing the terrifying background of this force. The archipelago is full of notorious villains and pirates, and there is a unique atmosphere of quarrels and competitions. Many people, after learning a series of news from the newspapers in the aftermath of the big incident, utter loud noises from time to time. Laughter and celebration. Also in this area that looks like a frenzy of pirates, a tall man is sitting on the highest throne on the island. That is the owner of this island and the ruler of the dozen or so pirate ships, Ochaku. The captain who used to belong to the Rocks pirate group, after falling apart, sat on the Beehive Island, one of the heritages, and was defeated by Kaido a few years ago and kicked out of New World. Like Gecko Moria, he became a world government Shichibukai of special call. At this moment, listening to the information reported by his deputy, knowing that the feared Wano Kuni forces have not made a move for a week, the desire that rises in his heart is gradually difficult to suppress. For a long time, Shichibukai has the title of world government on his body, which always makes him a member of one of the former Rocks captains, which is a little bit awkward. Shichibukai, how could he live as freely as the four emperors, not to mention that one of Kaido's current legacy is the Beehive Island that once robbed him of his territory. Kaido has already lost his lottery, he doesn't want this site to fall into the hands of others again. After reading this, Ochaku directly smashed the wine glass in his hand, and the wine flowed out from the gap between his fists, holding the fragments of the broken wine glass tightly in his hand. But it is completely unable to break through the thick skin protection. Ochaku slammed it violently, and under the terrifying force, the glass directly blasted towards the Torii not far away with an impact that was hard to follow with the naked eye, smashing it to pieces in an instant. Boom boom boom. The sound exploded. This move also successfully attracted the attention of everyone in the chaotic environment of Pirate Paradise. Little ones. Ochaku stood up, and with his aura fully opened, his voice seemed to directly spread throughout the entire island. It's time to start the chasing battle for the king under the aftermath. In the case of already rumors, many people know that Ochaku is keen on New World's goal. Now following the proclamation made by this statement, countless pirates raised their hands high, shouting loudly under the condition of weapons or wine glasses. And under the influence of the aftermath of this rippling, it is far more than just a Shichibukai like Ochaku. But anyone who pursues as a pirate is more or less limited to the position of Shichibukai, especially now that the new world has opened up opportunities. Excluding Crocodile, who has other goals, Gecko Moria, who basically doesn't plan to go deep into the new world, and Wily Russell, who only intends to roam the park in the first half of the Grand Line. The rest. Bad Wine Bardock, Swamp Villain Russell and the huge battleship San Juan Wolf are all ready for action. Just under such a wave that almost premeditated pirates and careerists are moving. Today, the news of Whitebeard pirates, one of the most eye-catching twin emperors like Wano Kuni, is like a bomb thrown into the surging sea, which still creates waves tens of meters high on the already unsettled sea. This news quickly spread across the entire world like a gust of wind sweeping across the sea. The idea that Whitebeard would also participate in the battle for the inheritance immediately dispelled the thoughts of many people. After all, there are monsters with the power to destroy the world, but they can deal a devastating blow to the fleet in an instant. Although I don't know who is the strongest man in the world compared with today's air generals, but having this title once is enough to show Whitebeard's terrifying strength and status. Of course, Moda knew the news for the first time. Even compared to the information at sea, he knew more through the shadow guards arranged. It is said that it is a competition, but Whitebeard only separated a part of his forces in the captain's fleet to participate in the competition for Kaido's inheritance. In addition to fighting, it is more about attracting the attention of most people on the sea. The main ship Moby Dick and many captain-level figures, through these attention shifts, are preparing to launch a surprise attack, taking advantage of the situation to approach Wano Kuni. As for how to launch a raid, it may be the way of waterproof coating in Summit War in the future. At this moment, Moda heard another report of key information from the deployment of shadow guards managed by Eren. Near Whitebeard, the red hair pirates pass by. Immediately, Moda squinted his eyes. It's not the time for that guy to come out yet. The purpose of the red-haired Shanks, Moda can naturally guess. But now he doesn't have the strength of Fruit of Face. How can he stop it? By courage? Whitebeard's pride is well known. The only ones who can soften his heart are his family and his hometown that has always supported him. Can't help but, Moda suddenly remembered the scene of the ending of the hero in Summit War in the original book. That was before Whitebeard died, still speaking for Roger's bleak era, refilling the era of great pirates with greater motivation. Although he has never been to Raftel, Whitebeard is aware of some of Roger's actions, and supports this action that looks like an enemy or a friend. As for the redhead, knowing that he is not strong enough, the only condition that can attract Whitebeard's attention is the membership of the original Roger ship. Moda pondered, maybe instead of fighting at Wano Kuni, he could go there himself. His subordinates and various military forces have undergone a thorough war baptism, and they are dispensable for the Whitebeard pirates' all-out war. What Moda cares about now is only limited to the name confrontation of the strongest man in the world. New World. Near the waters off the island of Sphinx, home of Whitebeard. Since the ship regiment under his command and other team captains attacked the island of Kaido's heritage, the atmosphere on the main ship Moby Dick is no longer the free and easy cheerfulness of the past, but the tense feeling of a battle ahead. Everyone seems to be fully prepared before the battle. As soon as the Kaido battlefield has the highest attention, the Whitebeard pirates will directly attack Wano Kuni. It's an uphill battle, but not an all-out war. The beginning of everything, but from the flag of the Fishmen Island caused by the contradiction. And Whitebeard just wanted to teach Moda a profound lesson for his meddling behavior. Of course, originally I wanted to lead the team to beat up Moda and snatch the spoils that the opponent got. It's just that as the scale of the Apex battle grows and the situation is overwhelmed, the retaliatory move that seems to be on the active side, under the already announced speeches, can't help but become a tough battle that actively seeks trouble. Marco, who was checking Whitebeard's body, was somewhat regretful in his heart. If he hadn't had any extra ideas at that time, or the idea of preventing his family from finding Wano Kuni to start a dispute, he might have only participated in the war on Kaido's inheritance instead of actively looking for Moda. It's such a hassle. Although he is not afraid of war, and he also believes in the strength of his father. But as a ship's doctor, he knows best about the possible injuries caused by a battle with Moda's strength. What's more, although Dad's recent signs have been hidden from everyone, there have actually been some bad hidden dangers. Fighting against Moda's level of monsters will inevitably cause hidden dangers to aggravate due to the use of abilities. When it comes to Whitebeard's body, in Marco's view, everything is a loss. Just then, a voice came from the watchtower of the Moby Dick's mainmast. There is a ship coming ahead, it seems to be the ship of the red-haired Shanks. When Marco heard it, his body transformed into a phoenix and flew up to the observation deck, and took a look through the binoculars. I saw a ship that looked like a dragon but had 2 horns, and a 3-masted sailing ship with a skull with a pirate flag and a red bandage on its left eye was slowly heading towards them. That's right, it's the red-haired Shanks boat, Marco said. Although he just entered New World not long ago, Red Hair Pirates has a good reputation because of the incident of extermination of the country. In addition, its captain is a member of Roger's ship, and the veterans of the White Regiment have an impression, let alone Whitebeard. The kid on Roger's boat. Whitebeard couldn't help but whispered. Immediately, some pirates called out to the opposing ship, and after a while, they ran to the middle of the deck and reported to Whitebeard, who was sitting tall. Daddy Redhead wants to see you. Gu la la la. Let him come up. Whitebeard laughed boldly. After a while, the Red Force sailed to the side of the Moby Dick and came to a stop. It wasn't until after the boarding that the members of the Red Hair Pirates walked up the wooden stairs extending from the Moby Dick step by step. Bone Shanks is dragging a huge wine jug. Long time no see, Whitebeard. Shanks, who was walking step by step dragging the flagon, stood on the deck opposite Whitebeard. The kid on Roger's boat looks like a man now. Even sitting, Whitebeard, who was twice as tall as the standing Shanks, looked down at the other party, and said flatly, I just saw your face, and some unpleasant memories came one after another. That's really sorry, so I brought a present this time. Facing the king of the sea, Shanks, who is famous in the New World today as a shrimp soldier and crab general, was not afraid. Instead, he raised his head and smiled, and then threw the huge wine bottle he was dragging towards Whitebeard, and said, This is the fine wine from my hometown, is also the treasure that the captain never forgets. Whitebeard took the wine bottle, sniffed the mouth of the bottle, poured a big gulp into his mouth, and showed a generous smile. Gu la la la. It's really good wine. Whitebeard praised, then turned his gaze to Shanks and his companions behind him. What? You dragged your family here as a gift, do you want to get my protection and become one of my sons? Hearing this, Shanks shook his head and said, I'm not here for this kind of thing, and I prefer to have my own adventure under risk. Although there was nothing wrong with what he said, some people got upset and shouted, It's your honor to be Daddy's son, are you looking down on our Whitebeard pirates? That's right. It's just a newcomer who is not well known in the New World. Don't become one of the people buried in the sea when the time comes to experience the baptism of the New World. Shanks ignored these people and just showed a nonchalant smile. For Shanks, Whitebeard is indeed very moved, but he also knows that this is the guy whose straw hat was inherited by Roger, and it is impossible to become a member of Whitebeard's team, so those words are just words. Although it was true that he was a bit upset about being rejected, the behavior of his sons was somewhat ugly, and before Whitebeard could speak, Marco had already said, Enough. This guy used to be a member of Roger's ship, and he can't do whatever he wants to meaning. Speaking in the name of the Pirate King Roger, the pirates, who had been clamoring for dissatisfaction before, couldn't help but stop talking, and looked at Shanks in amazement and disparity. Respect also began to have some feedback, so that the environment could not help but slowly form a dialogue between the two. Then Whitebeard continued, That's really a pity, but as long as you have ideas, the captain of Lousy welcomes you kid at any time. Putting it all together, Whitebeard said again, Let's talk about it, your real purpose of coming here, don't say it's just a stupid reason like offering treasures. When Shanks heard this, his expression became serious, and he took out a wine bowl from somewhere on his body, filled it with wine and drank it down. After finishing the ceremony of greeting, he said in a serious tone, I am here to prevent the Whitebeard pirates from fighting Wano-kuni. Immediately, the atmosphere on board changed. Accompanied by Whitebeard's eyes narrowing, an invisible sense of depression began to spread all over the deck of the Moby Dick. The repressed change of aura made everyone in the white group look at the red-haired eyes also changed, as if they had received a signal from their father. Many people showed their weapons one after another, waiting to see. Observing the same situation, the originally friendly red-haired group looked around as if they were all ready to go, and they didn't feel the slightest timidity from going deep into the place. Whitebeard, who caused the change in the atmosphere, did not speak slowly until after a while. Do you know what you are talking about? It is because I know that I came here. The red-haired expression did not change, as if he was acting as a peacemaker. If it is only because of the incident of the Fishman Island, there is no need for you and Wano-kuni to have any conflicts. It's more or less because of the air general, the difficulty of the Fishman Island at that time. Boom. A loud noise interrupted the red-haired voice. He smashed the jug aside, but cleverly did not break the ceramic, but rolled it a few times, letting most of the delicious wine seep out. You can stand in front of me and speak, it is because of your face as the captain, it does not mean that you are qualified to shout the so-called truth in front of me. Whitebeard's unceremonious words fell, and then a terrifying momentum vented from his body, attacking the red hair suddenly. The red hair didn't back down again, so he released the same powerful momentum. Two terrifying streams of Conqueror's Haki collided. Earth-shattering changes instantly took place on the entire Moby Dick. As if time had been frozen, under the terrifying aura, many weak-minded people fell to the ground in pieces. Only a small number of strong-willed old crew members were able to withstand the Haki under the impact of these two people without falling into a coma. That guy actually owns Conqueror's Haki. Many members of the Baituan who had seen the world were shocked immediately. What is even more frightening is that the other party, Haki, was able to endure such a long time with their father. Click. The solid wood on both sides of the ship's side cracked unbearably, which is enough to show how thick the two sides are. Haki is making some comparisons. Whitebeard was also a bit strange. He didn't expect the redhead to master such conqueror's skills at such a young age, but he felt relieved when he realized that Moda was about the same age as him, and even several times scarier than the other party. On the vast sea, there is never a shortage of terrifying monsters. But what's the matter? He, Whitebeard, is the one who came out of those monsters. Since you have also mastered conquerors, you brat, you should know the inviolable bottom line among kings, let alone lousy as Whitebeard. While speaking, Whitebeard pulled Kong Yunki behind him, and slashed towards the red hair. Shanks quickly pulled out the saber griffin behind him, and said in a serious tone, "Then if this matter continues, it will start an era of rampage that no one can stop. It's me. I'm also the captain. I don't want to see this situation." At the moment when the two knives collided, the mighty Haki slammed into each other instantly, and a powerful breath soared into the sky. The impact caused by the terrifying power even formed a fierce howling gust of wind, causing many people around to be directly blown away by the air current. Seeing this, Chao Zi said, "That damned red-haired man actually dared to attack Dad. Did he want to start a war with us?" Marco said seriously, "If that's the case, no one can leave alive." The captains of the various teams on the main ship also began to stare at the red-haired group with real hostility. For the red-haired group, the situation was in a precarious situation, but at the next moment, the violent aura in the center of the main ship suddenly ended and once again attracted everyone's attention. It seemed that it was just a brief confrontation. The two figures, one tall and one short, were already closing their hands. It's just that one side is still standing like a giant, while the red-haired one is sitting on the ground in some embarrassment, but what remains unchanged is still his firm gaze. As the two faced each other, their gazes collided like sharp swords in the void, and electric sparks bloomed invisible. No matter what your choice is, Whitebeard, I sincerely hope that you can seriously consider my suggestion. I don't want you to take revenge, but I just don't want you to now. No one can fathom the riots and changes in the new world. The redhead stood up slowly from the deck, and his tone was sincere and even pleading. I don't know if Captain Roger expected this unexpected event to unfold, but there is no doubt that the uncontrollable runaway is now it's over. Now this place has been cleared by Conqueror's Haki's attack, and some things can be said directly by the redhead. After he settled in the windmill town of East Blue, not only Luffy ate the rubber fruit, but also the redhead who bet on the new era has already decided. That is, in the future prophecy period, it will take over the Straw Hat and complete the Joey Boy expected by Captain Roger. And before Luffy goes to sea, he can't let New World change too much. Listening to Shanks' words, he could also comprehend the meaning expressed in it. He turned Kong Yunki in his hands like a windmill, and a violent gust of wind hit his feet. With a bang, Whitebeard lifted his hands from Yunki to the ground with 10 hands. This battle, I'm not so confused as to let it develop into an all-out war. Whitebeard looked at the red hair, but, no matter what the reason is, that bastard Moda provoked me on my name's territory first. This matter it will never end like this. Although he didn't know the specific facts about Raftel from Roger, Whitebeard can guess one or two based on Roger's character and behavior. So he is supportive, whether it is his experience from childhood to adulthood, or for his beloved hometown. But under the premise of this support, there is another corner that cannot be ignored, and that is his own pride as Whitebeard, and his image as a father to his sons. If you can't even solve the time when people are looking for trouble first, then the protection that the strongest man can give to his sons is not a ridiculous statement? Hearing the answer given by Whitebeard, the redhead sighed, but although it failed to prevent the confrontation between Whitebeard and Moda, as long as there is not another all-out war, it will be much better. If even Whitebeard is included, New World will directly become the situation where Moda's family is the biggest, and that is the unfolding of events that redheads do not want to see. Taking a deep look at Whitebeard, Shanks turned and left without hesitation. For a person who has reached this level, as long as it is a decision, it is almost impossible for others to change it. Now that Whitebeard has made a decision, it is useless for him to say more. Of course, he didn't mean to help. Compared with saying it verbally now, he might be beaten again. It's better to pay special attention to the incident, and it's better to disrupt the situation midway if something unexpected happens. The red-haired man who thought this way was about to walk along the deck to the stairs at the end, but suddenly found that the sun in the distance seemed to be blocked by something. He couldn't help looking around, and saw huge islands flying from the sky, slowly attacking here. Almost everyone on the Moby Dick at the moment is the same as the red-haired Shanks. The pirates who were looking at each other on the deck, the captains with amazing strength and perception, all changed their expressions, and just looked up at the sky. Like a shadow covering the sky and the sun, it is above the sky in the sea area. Just like the most common unpredictable weather on the Grand Line, the sea area, which was originally thousands of miles high, suddenly became dark and dark. Hey! What's that? What a big black shadow, it can't be some Sea King's bird. This kind of thing is not uncommon in the magical sea area of New World. But soon, the answer was spoken by someone with a better perspective. No, that's huge Sky Island. Hearing the sound of terrified shouts, everyone's face changed. In today's world, the one who has the ability to fly islands into the sky is another person in the current era of double emperors, and even surpassed his father in terms of rewards by 1 million Baileys. Moda is called the #1 person today. The island floating in the sky is the fruit ability of the flying general. Dad. The enemy is coming too. I saw an unknown number of kilometers above the sky, shuttling through the clouds, like a huge floating island like an island whale, constantly moving towards it with a terrible sense of oppression. Some pirates with low psychological quality all stared down their eyes angrily and were covered in cold sweat. A ship as huge as the Moby Dick is not even a tenth of the size on the island. And there is more than one island, just like a part of the whale group of underwater islands, and the sky is directly connected into an archipelago. For Moda, who owns a land builder in addition to the name of Sky Island, it is not difficult to just create an uninhabited island. What's more, if an island of this level is smashed down, it's not a joke, including the Moby Dick and the surrounding ships covered by islands, it will definitely be destroyed directly. This is not a monster that humans can fight against. An island of this level, what are you kidding? The unacceptable pirates yelled in panic, or fell to the ground with weak feet and could not move, or were already running around, trying to figure out how to escape and survive. Don't get flustered, you guys. Seeing the panicked family members, Marco yelled angrily. The other party only brought a few men over. Wanakuna's large army has not yet arrived, and it doesn't look like they are about to go to war. Captain Marco. The elders spoke, which largely calmed some morale, and then the rest looked up to the sky again. Indeed, as Marco said, the terrifying military warships of Wano-kuni were not around the island. It certainly doesn't look like an early warning of war. But, soon. As if slapping Marco in the face completely, the islands flying in the air seemed to express the meaning of the air general above, and an island whale was directly divided, with a terrifying impact, like a meteorite falling, locked onto the Moby Dick layer. The terrifying speed and impact even ignited the atmosphere, and terrifying flames burst out from around the island, turning into shocks that could make people feel suffocated, roaring towards them. The island is coming. Countless people yelled in horror, and even those pirates who had already run to the muzzle of the cannon were completely unable to move the hand that wanted to light the muzzle of the cannon. No matter how you think about it, you know that the cannonball is like the light of a firefly and the brightness of a bright moon when compared with an island. Let me. The captain of the third team, Chao Zi, roared, and his whole body turned into diamonds, trying to resist the impact. The next moment, a deep and angry voice shook everyone away. Get out of the way. The figure of the most familiar father, many people immediately forced back. Standing on the deck, with his right hand directly grabbing Kong Yunki, Whitebeard's exaggerated muscles swelled up in vain, his blue veins bulged out like dragon patterns, and with a sense of majestic power, he slammed from the island that was attacking Moda blast to the front. It's not the so-called sword slash, but it was a round cover with a white-like ability, which was frozen above Kong Yunki. That's the way of the pheasant knife, blasting out the force to bless the terrifying ability of the shock that Haki directly casts. The power of the vibration condensed in the void, and there was a loud and clear cracking sound immediately in front of the pheasant knife, just like transparent glass, with cracks shining with subtle light. It spread around like a spider web, and the biggest crack was tens of meters long. Space. The atmosphere was directly shattered by this attack, and burst open with dense cracks. Boom. The powerful destructive energy visible to the naked eye slammed into the island with terrifying impact. Suddenly, boom boom. Both sides are powerful enough to destroy the offensive of the world power, and they crash together. In front of the destructive vibration force, the huge island began to appear several cracks that spread, followed by a direct shattering from the outside to the inside. The giant island directly exploded like fireworks in the nearby air, and turned into countless flying gravel, impacting towards the distant sea surface. Like a torrential rain, it made a constant thud-thud thump falling into the sea, arousing many exploding waves. The attack was blocked, but you can also feel the horror of the strength of both sides. Thief, ha ha ha. At the stern of the Moby Dick, a pirate suddenly let out a low laugh. Teach first looked at Dad, and then at Moda, who was in the air. His eyes were full of heat. These are two powers that can really destroy the world, and they are also the powers he wants to have in his dreams. Compared with the invincible Papa, Teach's vision has also been broadened with the news after the Apex battle. Not only Papa, but he also became greedy for Moda's abilities. Papa's Paramecia shock fruit, the lion fruit that Papa doesn't even have the advantage of the sky, and the grass fruit that can expand the boosting ability. If he gets the strategic level devil fruit ability of these two people, the world's strongest throne, the great treasure of One Piece will definitely be his. Dark clouds spread all over, and thunder flashed instantly. It seems to be calling for the dignified atmosphere at this time. Holding a naginata, Whitebeard sits in the center of the Moby Dick, staring directly at the smiling Moda in the sky. His power and anger are clearly shown outside, even if he doesn't need to express it. No matter what the opponent's purpose is, or what thoughts one's own side has, the moment the opponent makes the first move, the identity of the enemy has already been declared. Moda. Whitebeard roared furiously, accompanied by Conqueror's power, causing the surrounding sea to churn continuously. In response, Moda's right hand was again turned outward. With a smile on his face, he looked down at the crowd. Blocked one move, but what about the second? There is not just an island around him, and the size is not limited to the level of an island whale. The archipelago consciously gathers in front of Moda in an instant, without even touching it with hands, directly under the assimilation operation of the mind. The multiplication and speed called Momo Awakening directly calls the size of the island whale like a town or even a country. The volume of the island. This effect is definitely not comparable to the islands falling at the same time. The black shadow covered the sky in vain, and the sea area tens of thousands of meters away below was shrouded in this black shadow that covered the sky and the sun. That is even more exaggerated than the previous islands. Even in the surrounding area, even the sunlight cannot be seen at this moment, just like an abyss-like night, descending on the scene unprecedentedly. It is the Moby Dick. Under this island, it is as desperate as the care of ants. Open. What are you going to do? How could this be possible? Is this the power of God? The degree of shock was wider than before. Countless people directly lost their morale and sat down in the face of this abyss. In this situation, Marco didn't know how to encourage him, and Inz didn't stand up bravely. If we talk about the previous island, he might use the hardness of the diamond to open a hole in the area around the Moby Dick. But this level, compared to him, is just mayflies shaking the tree. At this moment, the members of the Red Hair Pirates are already stunned. If the world witnesses this divine power, it would be frightening that the entire sea would be boiled over it. This is a truly world-destroying level. With a roar, the island fell again. There was no room to escape at all, and everyone could only look at the surface of the island with terrified eyes, zooming in constantly in their field of vision. Everyone was helpless, but they all cried and shouted, "Daddy!" It is not only Moda who has the ability to truly destroy the world. The fact is indeed the case. Moda is to force out the real power of Shockfruit. On this sea of New World, apart from the world government and marine, the one who can make Moda interested in fighting is the Whitebeard Edward Newgate in front of him. Responding to the terrified cries of his sons, in fact, even facing the former Golden Lion, he had never seen such a powerful island. Whitebeard took a deep breath, and the muscles on his body exploded everywhere, as if all the flesh and blood were about to explode into his body. A large knife, Kong Yunki, was placed heavily on the bow of the ship, and it just stood up straight like this. Whitebeard's muscles soared, his hands stretched towards the void, and then he seemed to grab the air, and yanked it, a yank. The power to destroy the world, the strongest Paramecia's shock ability, directly riots in the air. Accompanied by the violent shock, everything between heaven and earth changed color instantly. The terrible vibration, under the condition of assimilation, caused the sea to tremble like an earthquake. The surrounding seawater, which is 10,000 meters in length and width, was cut into pieces like a cake, and the cuts were flat, crooked on the sea. The sponge, which is almost in the same condition as the mainland, was then impacted by the terrifying shock force, and continuously rolled up and lifted up by the sea current for 10 steps, soaring up with the power of the poisonous collapse. It was like a tsunami soaring into the sky, gathering in all directions, colliding towards the endless abyss. Sensation. Like a collision between the sea and the continent. Like Mars hitting the Earth. The only word for the picture is spectacular. Tsunami. This is a move that Moda is used to, but under the power of the vibration, it can also reach such a scale. Among them, not only the power of the tsunami, but also the effect of the shock wave, completely restricting the effect of the fluttering ability that may be given to plunder. As Whitebeard's old opponent, Golden Lion has also developed an awakened attack method, which Whitebeard can be said to be very familiar with. With an area of this level, no one can give it a terrifying armed color. In terms of mass comparison, the sparse seawater cannot collide with the substantive land at all, not to mention that the island is in the form of falling impact, coupled with the multiplied changes of various speeds of grass. The continuous surging tsunami seems to be completely unable to resist the attack of the abyss. Apart from slowing down the extreme speed of the fall, it can't stop it from crushing it overwhelmingly. See here. Instantly grabbing the standing Kong Yunki with his right hand, Whitebeard jumped suddenly. The terrifying force directly caused the Moby Dick to sink down. Using Moonwalk, Whitebeard volleyed to the top of the main ship, holding the naginata tightly with both hands, and slashed at the boulder with momentum like a rainbow. The nearly 7-meter giant body looked like an ant in front of the boulder, but the white light flickering on its naginata was like a sharp weapon that could break open the dark abyss in front of it. The seawater receded, followed by gigantic cracks that stretched across kilometers in the air. As if he had exerted all his breastfeeding strength, coupled with the strength of the monstrous tsunami gathered earlier, Whitebeard even had blue veins all over his face, making him look extremely ferocious. And with this hard work, the most direct thing is that the air shock of less than 1/10 of the island felt the impact of the island. Immediately afterwards, just like the island at the beginning, the terrifying power of the vibration turned into energy capable of crushing everything, and it was blasted away under the air shock. With a straight white light, it shattered the island into 2 halves, and firmly kept the kilometer around the white group. 2 islands with a diameter of more than a few thousand meters fell towards the sea with a sound of piercing the atmosphere. Shock is coming. Get ready. Countless pirates shouted loudly, and the shattered islands fell to the sea. Pung dong. The earth-shattering sound, accompanied by the soaring waves, swept across this area. Countless creatures on the bottom of the sea were directly turned into bloodwater by the impact of this level of islands, and merged into this sea area. The impact set off a terrifying wave, which turned into countless kilometer-high tsunamis, even higher than the area where Moda was standing, forming a new danger and crushing towards the surroundings. Not boom. There were 2 more silent air noises. The tsunami that was pressing towards the Whitebeard pirates was receded by the vibration in the air and fell back to the sea surface, causing the highly stable Moby Dick to shake violently up and down. Stand up. After resolving the space-based attack casually caused by Moda, Whitebeard felt too powerful. In terms of the inheritance of the monster's physique, he was also panting heavily at this moment, and there was a lot of sweat on his body. Perhaps it has something to do with his old age, or it may be caused by the internal injuries accumulated in his body after using the vibration ability for a long time. After Whitebeard fell, Marco, who was the first to step forward, had realized this. As the ship's doctor, no one knew his father's physical condition better than him. But at this moment, I can't say it outright to slap my father in the face. I can only step forward to support my father with an excuse, and instill some healing elements of immortality into it. Whitebeard didn't refuse either, for someone as arrogant as him knows the basics of the people around him, not to mention Marco who brought him up all the way. The Moda in front of me, as the news said, has the power to destroy the world. If it was placed at the peak of his youth, he might not be afraid. But now his own body, he himself also understands that although he will not feel afraid of it, but when fighting, it will definitely exceed the level he expected. However, after experiencing such an attack of world-killing levels, Moda, standing in the air, stopped attacking, and at the same time, Yamato and Hancock, who were beside them, also gradually zoomed in on the Moby Dick following the slow landing on the island. Figure. When countless tons of stormy seawater gradually calmed down with the vibration, Moda has also landed to an altitude of less than 100 meters from Whitebeard. Moda looked down slowly, holding Kong Yunki, Whitebeard who was guarding the gate with one man, and said with a smile, I didn't expect you to be so old, and you are still so young. I still have the strength to shoot you bastard into the water. The previous attack that could directly destroy the base camp of the Whitebeard directly made Whitebeard not want to talk to Moda. Now that the opponent has shortened the distance, he no longer intends to use the rogue style of landing on the island, Whitebeard thought. Whitebeard narrowed his long and narrow eyes slightly, and stomped heavily on his left foot. Under the overwhelming force, the huge body danced and counted to the wind. Whitebeard was like thunder, as if he had crossed a distance of tens of meters, and came to Moda. With a naginata in his hand, he swung his sword and slashed at Moda like a rainbow, in front of Da. Moda, who had already expected such a situation, first used his ability to move the two girls beside him away, and then pulled out Qiwuhai with enthusiasm, and the aura in his pupils instantly vented. Kuang, even before the two supreme sword-level weapons collided, the lightning coiled under the Conqueror's haki was already filling the void. The two of them moved up and down, and the majestic Conqueror's haki collided violently with each other. Za, a streak of scarlet light, in the world of Fey Sky Island, lacing made a sound. Crack, crack, crack. The ground where Whitebeard and Moda clashed sounded like crushed milfoil biscuits. Crash, crash, crash. As the arms of the two swelled up, one side was holding a domineering vibration, and the other side was wrapped in a sharp sword. The ground accelerated like a spider's web, and quickly spread to the surroundings. The eyes of Moda and Whitebeard burst into red light, as if an electrical storm had occurred in the air. Conqueror's haki sparks an arc of sparks under the twist. Between Qiwuhai and Kong Yunki, the haki power star collided fiercely, and the pressure eroded into a cyclone, directly bombarding the already cracked ground, and countless mudstones flew into the air with the impact of the airwaves. The gust of wind suddenly picked up, and even hit the flying sky island under the feet, which is also not small in size. This didn't touch it at all. Many people watched the battle between the kings of this unrivaled battle, and many people saw each other's weapons bombarding violently through the air, and they couldn't help being surprised. Under this, the terrifying haki couldn't help venting. Until the majestic haki condensed into a circular cyclone, it rushed to the sky in an instant, and the sky burst open for this, and the surrounding high-altitude clouds within tens of thousands of meters were wiped out without leaving any ground. The seawater also churned at this moment, and the strong wind rolled the waves and pushed them into the distance. The members of Whitebeard shouted loudly, "Boat!" The two huge pirate ships on the coast tilted instantly, and were almost overturned and blown away by the aftermath of the momentum. In this kind of situation, the veteran of the Whitebeard pirates and the red-haired Shanks are no strangers. It was the most common grand occasion where Whitebeard and the One Piece confronted, and it belonged to the display of the top strength of the sea. This is the pinnacle of New World strength today. It seems to have experienced a century of changes in the world, but it only took less than half a minute. The terrifying domineering aura of the two clashes disappeared at the same time. Both sides were shaken away by the terrifying force. Whitebeard landed steadily above the Sky Island, and Moda just retreated a lot of distance behind the flying one. It seems that under the tyrannical confrontation, there are some inseparable situations. But the battle between kings doesn't seem to end like this. Just stabilizing his body, Whitebeard didn't give Moda any chance to breathe. He just grabbed Kong Yunki, condensed the vibrating white wave and swung it out. Under the impact of this kind of energy, all the ground it passed through was cracked, and huge cracks appeared as if the cracks were caused by an earthquake. Moda slashed out with the sword force of a great swordsman, and the flying slash directly blocked Zhenbo's attack. And a huge shadow has been bullying him, and at the same time there is a terrifying heavy chopping force. Brush, Moda stepped forward, and Qiwuhai instantly slashed into the attacking air. Crack, click, click. Not only the impact of strength, but also the energy of vibration. The ground under Moda's feet collapsed directly. Unable to counter the offensive with any force, Moda took advantage of the situation to withdraw the resisting Qiwuhai, and at the same time, his body was directly tens of meters away under the acceleration of Momo. The position where he was standing before was instantly affected by the shock, and a prominent deep pit was blasted out. Boom. The light caused by the terrifying energy exploded, instantly shining on everything around, making it so painful that it was difficult to open your eyes. Each path is a confrontation of top-level power, which not only drives the destructive power, but also contains the power enough to change the sky and the earth. Under the pouring energy of the fight between Moda and Whitebeard, the ground climbed countless huge cracks. The dark cloud layer is also like a ravine that is constantly spreading, reflecting a shocking picture. Under the airwaves, a devastating wind hit the island and the sea. Gravel splashed and roared again and again. The entire Sky Island trembled violently like the end of the world. The most face-to-face is everyone on the Moby Dick not far away. Although they were standing on the Moby Dick in the base camp, to be honest, in a battle of this level, they couldn't participate at all, and they even retreated away because they were worried about the situation of being seriously affected. At this moment, I can only watch with shock, fear, and expectation, the confrontation between the top forces in the New World Sea. Before the shocking results of the Imperial battle came, Hancock and Yamato, who came with Moda, were driven by the excuse of traveling to the island and came to the Moby Dick. It seems to be a menacing situation, but the two aces in front of them are facing the core cadres of the entire Whitebeard pirates. In this situation, Hancock in particular scanned the members of the White Party below with contemptuous eyes. Just in the mind, countless pirates who steal their thoughts in their hearts because of their beauty, can't help emitting white smoke from their bodies. It is the most mysterious soul of human beings, directly affected by the soul power. The power to seduce out. Countless pirates who didn't show their faces, but were directly driven by their thoughts, turned into evil eyes, and their hearts and souls were taken away turned into white eyes, and fell heavily to the ground. At this moment, a tyrannical haki turned into a substantive depressive aura, which instantly washed away the greed that arose in many people's hearts, and then, under the second transformation, swept towards Hancock. The most basic ability of ecstasy was affected by it, and the conquerors who had mastered the entanglement also exploded on Hancock, instantly counteracting the impact. At the same time, Hancock also found the person who affected her ability to use. Rather, at this moment, the other party just appeared in the field of vision, holding a griffin with one hand, staring at Hancock who was using his ability wantonly, and Yamato who was equally dangerous without making a move. The situation of the matter was a bit beyond his expectation. The redhead wouldn't be surprised by what Moda might learn about Whitebeard's planned offensive. After all, on a ship like Whitebeard, where fish and dragons are mixed together, Shiki can find out, but how can the powerful and prosperous Wano-kuni not know? But what he didn't expect was that when he first went to Whitebeard to negotiate, Moda was already on his way, and without saying a word, he directly launched a world-destroying terrorist force. It is precisely because of this unrivaled performance in the battle that Redhead realizes that Whitebeard can really restrain Moda, who is in charge of the sky and even the land today. So as long as Whitebeard is still alive, New World will not be dominated by the Air General family. But in front of him is a battle that he is absolutely not qualified to participate in now. Then Shanks could not help but focus on the two women. As the top trump cards under the general's command, if they can be restricted, they may be able to play a restrictive role in the battle situation. But when it comes to his own character, it is difficult for Shanks to use women to blackmail the other party, even if it is highly effective. Looking at Shanks, who was standing up, Hancock couldn't help but look at him. After all, he was able to contend with his conqueror's impact, which meant that the opponent had also mastered the conquerors. You're not a member of the Whitebeard pirates, are you? Why do you want to obstruct my concubine? Hancock couldn't help but stood high in the air, pointing at Shanks with an extremely dissatisfied expression on his face. Many of the members of the White Group, who were also relieved from Shanks' haki, shook their heads slowly, not daring to focus on Hancock with other thoughts. Among them, looking at those pirates who lost their souls and fell to the ground pale, Teach was afraid, and looked at Hancock in horror. This guy's beauty, few normal men can resist, and with the soul fruit of Big Mom, it is too dangerous. He's right, Redhead. Marco, who turned into a phoenix, said with a serious face, as if the sound of birdsong resounded on the deck of the Moby Dick, and he turned into a phoenix. Fight. Behind him, the captains of the core cadres are also ready to hold weapons. Although there are many enemies and few enemies, since the opponents are all provoking in their homes, there is no need to care about these. Ho-ho, can we fight? Yamato looked at the number of opponents, but his expression flashed with excitement, and the slightest bit of ferocious electric current began to spread across his body. Let me ask you a fact first. The red-haired Shanks did not retreat according to Marco's words, but still stood on the confronting deck, looking at the two women. Since you didn't bring the Wano-kuni army with you, it means that the Air General didn't plan to start a war with the Whitebeard Regiment. It's hard to say, after all, it was the Whitebeard Regiment who planned to fight us first. Yamato held the mace and looked down. But this time, the fact is like this, we just followed to witness the fight between Moda and Whitebeard. He deserves to sit on the throne of the first man. Daddy won't lose. Chao Zi, who has a bad temper, suddenly turned into a diamond and charged towards her with a terrifying armed force. Just in time. Not afraid at all, Yamato slammed it away with a tyrannical attack method wrapped around the mace. The attacks of the two were directly caught by the knife handle inserted in the middle, and they were even directly hit by the firepower of both sides. The red hair who made the attack was severely retreated several steps. "What do you mean, red hair?" The man with a beard and 10 squares immediately yelled. But it was a person who was committed to acting as a spoiler, and the red hair stood in the middle of the confrontation between the two sides. On the same ground, there were also members of the red hair pirates who followed. Since it is only to witness the strongest name, there is no need to start unnecessary battles. "Are you kidding me? Redhead." Marco frowned dissatisfiedly. "But that woman attacked us first, didn't she tell us to leave these brothers who don't know the situation? And from the beginning, she wanted to put us in the death, they are enemies. I don't think there's anything wrong with sanctioning these dirty minds." Hancock raised his hand and held G's beautiful hair next to his ear. Beneath his charming face, there was an undisguised contempt and arrogance. "The only one who can admire the beauty of my concubine is that heaven." While speaking, the haughty expression turned into a shy girl again, which made many pirates who were already afraid, so their souls left again and fell to the ground directly. Seeing this, the captain's anger became even more steady. "It's all like this, do you still want to stop us?" 3. For the angry and dissatisfied questions of the white team leaders, the red-haired Shanks still stood in the middle, expressing his answers with unchanging actions. "If you want to make a move, then let us be your opponent." The red-haired face was serious, "whether it's your whitebeard pirates or the Wano-kuni ace." This speech not only made the white team leaders glared, but even Yamato was a little confused. But the redhead who got Yamato's speech knew the reason for his actions, and even changed his mind about stopping the two aces before. Just as a witness to snatch the strongest throne, the main focus should be the two people fighting at the top, not the respective forces of the two sides below. But if after the imperial battle, no matter who wins the situation under his command has changed seriously, it will not be as simple as Moda versus Beard. The war between the two sides was originally the reason why the red hair came to stop it, and it is the last situation I want to see now. Of course, I won't let you continue to use your abilities arbitrarily to cause more trouble. After Shanks expressed his position, he looked at Hancock and added. He didn't care about the so-called white group, but Hancock was very upset about the red-haired speech. "It's really uncomfortable words, just you, are you qualified to influence the concubine's thoughts?" Wendy, Salome, Anubis. Responding to Hancock's 3 shouts, the python Salome who had been following him immediately burst into flames, and his body swelled several times, spreading in the air. But it is not that it has the ability to fly, but it is the wind that materializes and condenses, holding it up with Hancock. "My Lord Empress." The substantive wind elements, when gathered together, emerged a human face with a delicate face, and said respectfully to Hancock. However, it is completely different from the docile, Wendy, that carries Hancock. The other one that appears is composed of jet black elements of unknown objects, constructing a materialized black hole. Being able to reveal a conspicuous human face in the darkness, Anubis looked down with a ferocious face at the moment. "I seem to see a lot of souls that can be harvested." And seeing this kind of creature beyond existence below, the pirates immediately came to the conclusion that it was Big Mom's specialty, homies created by using soul power. And it is very likely that it is homies who is made with his own soul and possesses terrifying abilities. That's the truth. After obtaining the powerful fruit ability of Charlotte Linlin, the use of homies is naturally also under Hancock's study. She first gave her pet Mellows the role of flame and gigantic physique, and then captured the temperature of the wind as a mount and means of attack in order to follow Moda's flight. The last one, of course, is the main attacker Anubis who can maximize the output. As long as Haki is not qualified or even destroyed, once touched by it, the target's soul will be forcibly taken away. At the same time, it also has a stored soul, and uses the soul ability to emit various destructive moves. The red hair held Griffin tightly. At this moment, he could somewhat feel the sense of danger from the homies of Anubis. The strength of the woman in front of him was really extraordinary. This was somewhat beyond his expectations. You must know that before, even with Bai Tuan, he also thought that he could easily suppress an ace. Now based on his feelings, it is not an easy task, not to mention that there is another famous and even more famous very trump card. But he couldn't let the domineering woman in front of him arbitrarily make this situation worse. In this case, don't blame us for being rude. And it's not just Hancock and Yamato on the side, as the red hair pirates in the middle, they also have to face the leaders of the Whitebeard team, known as the strongest pirate group. The red hair pirates themselves did not expect that suddenly, they became an enemy that the strongest forces in the New World are dealing with today. In an instant, the pressure was full, and many more. At this time, Marco was looking at Shanks, as if he could see something from this trainee crew member who was in the same period of mutual influence, and he couldn't help but raised his hand to block some captains who became angry. Substituting Shanks in coming to the starting point of the white group, Marco seemed to have guessed something, and because he knew more about his father's body, he was not willing to fight Wano-kuni, so he stopped it for a while. What are you waiting for, Marco? These guys are jumping on top of our Whitebeard pirates. Just as Marco was about to say something, at this moment, the battlefield above experienced a violent tremor, temporarily causing the three forces to stop and look upwards. That was a huge noise coming from above the island. Immediately after whistling, the tremor and the roar under the slash wave, when the two fought, the island was directly split into two, and in the center were two continuously bombarding figures. In any case, those two fighting figures are the most important thing at this moment. And it seems that under the flat situation, there has been a change. Bang. The two intersected their subordinates, and each took a small step back on the island that was still floating after the shattering. The naginata fell back into the palm of his hand, and Whitebeard turned around on the spot, using the gesture of chopping Huishan with all his strength, spinning and slashing heavily. Underneath that, the terrifying waveform shock energy swept out again. Boom. The sky was filled with Madara cracks again, and the terrifying power of shock burst out from the void. With an extremely wide range, Moda used the Momo Fruit Slash to block the shockwave directly under the momentum of the sword, and at the same time came behind Whitebeard with 100 times the speed of the flash. Whitebeard, who was about to react, suddenly realized that he lost the information to capture the opponent's body under the capture of his own knowledge. Just in such a short moment, PFF'd. The slash was successful and landed behind Whitebeard. With all kinds of blessings, Sakura, even Charlotte Linlin's physique, couldn't stop it. Whitebeard's back, which was full of armed defense, was cut directly with a huge bloodstain.